It's my journey, it's your journey. You need my help and I need yours. 'Cause we are...
Welcome to Journeys of Faith. Welcome to Journeys of Faith, founded by Bob and Penny Lord. Brother Joseph Fry Aldenhoven at your service. Be sure to click the link in the description for the full article. St. Teresa of Avila, Doctor of Prayer and Carmelite Reformer. In the vast tapestry of Catholic history, few figures shine as brightly as St. Teresa of Avila, a mystic, reformer, and doctor of the Church whose life continues to inspire the faithful across centuries. At Journeys of Faith, we are drawn to her story not just for its historical weight, but for the raw, transformative power of her spiritual witness, a power that resonates deeply with anyone yearning for a closer walk with God. Born in 1515 in the rugged heart of Spain, Teresa de Cepeda y Ahumada emerged from a world of earthly privilege to become a towering force of renewal within the Carmelite Order, a beacon of prayer, and a guide for countless souls navigating the often turbulent waters of faith. Her journey wasn't a straight path paved with ease. Like so many of us, Teresa wrestled with doubt, distraction, and the pull of worldly desires before surrendering fully to God's call. But when she did, the heavens themselves seemed to open. Her writings, raw, intimate, and piercingly honest, reveal a woman who experienced the divine in ways that defy easy explanation, from ecstatic visions to the profound interior castle of the soul she so vividly described. For Catholics today, her life offers not just a historical curiosity, but a living roadmap for deepening prayer and embracing reform, both personal and communal. At Journeys of Faith, we've long been captivated by saints like Teresa, whose stories are not mere relics of the past, but active invitations to encounter Christ in our own lives. Through our pilgrimages, media, and resources, we strive to bring her legacy to life, whether it's walking the sacred paths of Avila, where she once prayed, or diving into her teachings through our books and programs. As we explore her extraordinary contributions as a reformer of the Carmelite Order and a master of contemplative prayer, let us remember that her mission aligns with ours to draw closer to God, one step, one prayer, one journey at a time. Join us as we delve into the life of St. Teresa of Avila, a woman whose faith reshaped the church and whose words still echo with divine urgency. Early life and family roots. In the heart of 16th century Spain, where the clash of old world faith and burgeoning reform simmered beneath the surface, Teresa de Cepeda y Ahumada was born on March 28, 1515 in Avila. Her early life wasn't marked by divine visions, at least not yet, but by the earthy, complex tapestry of family and culture. Her father, Alonso Sanchez de Cepeda, was a wealthy merchant, a man of means who'd converted from Judaism to Catholicism, navigating the treacherous social currents of a Spain obsessed with purity of blood. Her mother, Beatriz de Ahumada, bore 10 children, and Teresa, the third, grew up in a household where faith was both a shield and a burden, a quiet undercurrent to the daily grind of survival. Teresa's childhood was a mix of innocence and restless yearning. She wasn't just a dreamy kid lost in stories of saints and martyrs, though she devoured those tales with a fervor that hinted at her future. At 7, she famously convinced her brother Rodrigo to run away with her to seek martyrdom among the Moors, a half-baked plan born of childish zeal and a longing for something greater than the walls of Avila. They didn't get far before an uncle dragged them back, but that spark of audacity, that hunger for transcendence, never dimmed. Her mother's death when Teresa was just 14 shattered her world, leaving her to grapple with grief and a newfound devotion to the Virgin Mary as a maternal guide. This was no idyllic upbringing, but a crucible. Teresa's early years were shaped by loss, societal suspicion of her family's converso roots, and a growing tension between worldly temptations and spiritual pull. She'd later confess to a youthful flirtation with vanity, dressing up, chasing romance novels, dreaming of chivalry, Yet even then, beneath the surface, a deeper call stirred. It was in this messy human struggle that the seeds of a reformer, a mystic, and a doctor of prayer were sown, waiting for the right moment to break through. Join us on a journey of faith with St. Teresa of Avila. At Journeys of Faith, we're not just about telling the stories of saints like St. Teresa of Avila, we're about living them. Since 1980, we've been guiding Catholics and seekers alike into the heart of our faith through transformative pilgrimages, soul stirring retreats, and trusted resources that bring the mysteries of the Church to life. Inspired by Teresa's unshakable devotion and reformist spirit, we invite you to deepen your own spiritual path with us. Here's how you can walk in her footsteps, embark on a pilgrimage. Join us on a sacred journey to sites tied to St. Teresa and other holy figures where history and faith collide in unforgettable ways. Explore our resources, St. Teresa of Avila collection. Dive into our books, DVDs, and digital content crafted with care to illuminate the lives of saints and the power of the Eucharist. Attend a retreat, experience renewal at our Holy Family Mission, where prayer and reflection reignite your connection to God. Stay connected. Subscribe to our updates for inspiring stories, upcoming events, and exclusive content to fuel your faith. Let Journeys of Faith be your guide. Take the first step today. Your soul's adventure awaits. Conversion and call to deeper prayer. In the quiet of a 16th century Spanish convent, St. Teresa of Avila faced a reckoning that would alter the course of her life and the history of the Catholic Church. At the age of 39, after years of wavering between worldly distractions and spiritual longing, Teresa experienced a profound conversion. It wasn't a sudden thunderclap of divine intervention, but rather a slow, grinding realization born from personal struggle and raw honesty with herself. She had entered the Carmelite convent at 20, yet for nearly 2 decades her prayer life remained lukewarm, tangled in the comforts of social chatter and the inertia of routine. But then something broke open. A piercing encounter with an image of the wounded Christ shattered her complacency. As she gazed upon the suffering Savior, Teresa felt an undeniable call to abandon half measures and dive into the depths of prayer. This wasn't just a fleeting emotional high, it was a summons to reform, both personally and communally. She began to understand prayer not as a rote obligation, but as an intimate dialogue with God, a lifeline to the divine. Her writings later captured this shift with searing clarity. Prayer is nothing else than being on terms of friendship with God. For Teresa, this friendship demanded vulnerability, persistence, and a willingness to confront one's own weaknesses. This conversion also ignited her mission to reform the Carmelite Order. She saw complacency not just in herself, but in the lax practices of many convents of her time, where spiritual discipline often took a back seat to worldly concerns. With a fierce determination rooted in her renewed faith, Teresa set out to establish communities grounded in poverty, simplicity, and intense prayer, eventually founding the Discalced Carmelites. Her vision wasn't about tearing down, but rebuilding on a foundation of authentic devotion. Through her own journey of deeper prayer, she became a beacon for others, showing that true reform starts within, in the quiet, often painful spaces of the heart, mystical experiences, and visions. In the heart of St. Teresa of Avila's spiritual legacy lies a tapestry of mystical encounters that defy earthly explanation, weaving together the divine and the human in a way that still captivates the faithful centuries later. Her life, already marked by a fierce dedication to reform and prayer, became a vessel for extraordinary visions that would shape her writings and the Carmelite Order itself. These weren't fleeting daydreams or idle musings. They were profound, often unsettling experiences that Teresa herself grappled to understand, documenting them with a raw honesty that cuts through the veil of time. One of the most iconic of these visions, often called the transverberation, came to her in her later years around 1559. Teresa described an angel piercing her heart with a fiery spear, a moment of intense spiritual ecstasy mingled with physical pain. In her own words from the life of Teresa of Jesus, she wrote of a love so divine it burned, leaving her utterly transformed. This wasn't just a personal revelation, it became a cornerstone of her teaching on the soul's union with God, a reminder that true intimacy with the divine often comes through surrender and suffering. Her account isn't polished or performative, it's visceral, almost journalistic in its detail, as if she's reporting from the front lines of the supernatural. These mystical episodes weren't without scrutiny. In an era of inquisition and suspicion, Teresa's visions raised eyebrows among church authorities. Was she a saint or a heretic, a mystic or a madwoman? She faced interrogations, yet her humility and clarity in describing these encounters, always grounding them in scripture and obedience to the church, disarmed her critics. Her visions of Christ, of heavenly realms, and even of hell itself weren't just personal graces. They fueled her mission to reform the Carmelites, to strip away worldly distractions, and return to a life of deep contemplative prayer. What strikes most is Teresa's insistence on the practical amid the otherworldly. She didn't float above the mundane on a cloud of mysticism. She used these experiences as a blueprint for spiritual discipline. Her writings, like The Interior Castle, map out the soul's journey through 7 stages of divine closeness, drawn directly from her visions. It's as if she's handing us a field guide to the infinite, urging us to seek God not just in lofty heights, but in the quiet, persistent work of prayer. Her mysticism wasn't an escape, it was a call to action, a challenge to live with radical trust in God's presence, no matter how piercing or perplexing that presence might be. Transverberation, the wound of divine love. In the heart of Saint Teresa of Avila's spiritual journey lies an experience so profound, so otherworldly, that it defies the boundaries of human language. This is the transverberation, a mystical piercing of the heart by divine love, an event that became a cornerstone of her legacy and a vivid symbol of her union with God. Picture this: a woman already weathered by years of inner struggle and reformist battles, kneeling in prayer, when suddenly an angel appears, wielding a fiery spear. The angel thrusts it into her heart not once but repeatedly, each strike igniting a pain so exquisite, so intertwined with ecstasy, that Teresa herself could only describe it as a wound of love, a wound she never wished to heal. This wasn't just a vision, it was a transformation. Teresa recounts in her autobiography, The Life of St. Teresa of Avila by herself, that the pain was both physical and spiritual, a burning that left her utterly consumed by God's presence. Mauricio, the pain was so great, she writes, that it made me moan, and yet so surpassing was the sweetness of this excessive pain that I could not wish to be rid of it. Imagine that paradox, a suffering so intense it could break you, yet so saturated with divine sweetness that you'd beg for it to linger. This moment, often depicted in art like Bernini's breathtaking sculpture, The Ecstasy of St. Teresa, captures the raw, unfiltered intensity of her mystical life. But let's not romanticize it too quickly. Teresa wasn't one for idle daydreams or fanciful escapes. She was a pragmatist, a reformer, a woman who wrestled with doubt and human frailty. The transverberation wasn't a one off spiritual high, it was a call to deeper surrender, a reminder of the cost of intimacy with Christ. It fueled her mission, driving her to found convents under the strict Carmelite rule, to pen works like The Interior Castle, and to mentor others in the ways of contemplative prayer. This wound of divine love wasn't just personal, it was prophetic, a sign of what true communion with God could look like, even amidst the grit and grind of 16th century Spain. What does this mean for us centuries later? Teresa's transverberation isn't just a curious footnote in hagiography, it's a challenge. It asks whether we're willing to let God pierce through our defenses to expose the raw, vulnerable core of who we are. It's not about seeking visions or dramatic encounters. It's about opening ourselves to a love so fierce it reshapes everything. Teresa didn't just endure this wound, she lived from it, letting it propel her into a life of radical faith and unrelenting service. Her heart, pierced by the divine, became a beacon for anyone daring to seek God with the same reckless abandon. Founding the Discalced Carmelites in the mid 16th century, Saint Teresa of Avila looked at the state of the Carmelite Order and saw a spiritual landscape in desperate need of renewal. The convents of her time, often mired in laxity and worldly distractions, had strayed from the austere, contemplative roots that defined the order's original charism. Teresa, with her unyielding resolve and a heart ablaze for God, wasn't content to sit idly by. She embarked on a mission that was nothing short of revolutionary, founding the Discalced Carmelites, a reform movement that would strip away complacency and return to the raw, unfiltered pursuit of divine union. This wasn't a simple tweak to the system, it was a seismic shift. Teresa faced resistance at every turn: skeptical clergy, reluctant nuns, and the weight of entrenched tradition bore down on her like a relentless storm. Yet, fortified by her mystical experiences and an unshakable trust in God's guidance, she pressed on. In 1562, she established her first Reformed convent, San Jose in Avila, under a rule of radical simplicity. No shoes, hence discalced, meaning barefoot or wearing only sandals. No idle chatter, no personal possessions, just prayer, poverty, and a life wholly surrendered to Christ. Teresa's vision was a return to the desert spirituality of the early Carmelites, a life of silence and sacrifice that mirrored the prophets of old. She didn't just reform structures, she reformed souls, demanding a level of commitment that would intimidate even the most devout. Her new foundation spread like wildfire, each convent a beacon of renewed fervor, challenging the status quo of a church in need of heroes. With every brick laid in these houses of prayer, Teresa was building a legacy, one that would echo through centuries as a testament to what a single, God driven woman could achieve against impossible odds. Travels and new foundations across Spain. In the mid 16th century, St. Teresa of Avila embarked on a relentless mission across the rugged landscapes of Spain, her heart ablaze with a divine calling to reform the Carmelite order. Picture this: a woman in her late 40s, often ill, traveling by mule cart over dusty, bone rattling roads, facing skepticism and outright hostility from religious and secular authorities alike. Yet her resolve was unshakable. Between 1567 and 1582, Teresa founded 17 convents, each a bastion of her vision for a return to the austere, prayer centered roots of Carmelite life. Her first foundation, the convent of San Jose in Avila, set the tone in 1562, a small, impoverished community where the nuns lived in strict enclosure, embracing poverty and contemplation. But Teresa didn't stop there. She pressed on to cities like Medina del Campo, Toledo, and Salamanca, negotiating with bishops, securing meager funds, and often battling the resistance of local clergy who saw her reforms as a threat to the status quo. Her writings reveal the raw grit behind these endeavors. In the book of her foundations, she recounts the physical and spiritual toll, sleepless nights, opposition from within her own order, and the constant whisper of doubt. Yet she framed every hardship as a cross to bear for Christ, her unwavering trust in God's providence a guiding light. Each new convent was a testament to her strategic mind and deep faith. She handpicked locations with care, often choosing places where spiritual need was greatest, and instilled in her nuns a discipline that was both radical and reverent. Her reformed Discalced Carmelites, named for their barefoot simplicity, became a countercultural force, a quiet rebellion against the laxity that had crept into monastic life through storms, both literal and metaphorical. Teresa's travels reshaped the spiritual landscape of Spain, planting seeds of renewal that would echo through centuries. Challenges and opposition to reform. Saint Teresa of Avila, a woman of unyielding faith and fiery determination, faced a gauntlet of obstacles as she sought to reform the Carmelite order in the 16th century in Spain. Her vision for a return to the austere, prayer centered roots of the order, embodied in her establishment of the Discalced Carmelites, was not welcomed by all. The spiritual landscape of her time was fraught with tension, and Teresa's push for reform often felt like a solitary battle against a deeply entrenched system. Within the Carmelite order itself, resistance came swiftly. Many of her fellow nuns and superiors viewed her reforms as a direct critique of their more relaxed practices. The idea of stricter enclosure, poverty, and a renewed focus on contemplative prayer clashed with the comfort and social connections some convents had grown accustomed to. Teresa's insistence on discalced life, literally barefoot, symbolizing humility and detachment, stirred resentment among those who saw her as an upstart, even a threat to their way of life. She was met with accusations of pride and disobedience, her motives questioned by those who preferred the status quo. Beyond the convent walls, Teresa faced opposition from ecclesiastical authorities and secular powers. The Spanish Inquisition, ever vigilant for heresy in an era of religious upheaval, cast a wary eye on her mystical writings and experiences. Her accounts of divine visions and ecstasies, while profound and deeply personal, raised suspicions of unorthodoxy. Teresa had to navigate this scrutiny with a blend of humility and shrewdness, ensuring her teachings aligned with church doctrine while defending the authenticity of her spiritual encounters. Meanwhile, local officials and nobility, who often had financial or political stakes in the convents, resisted her reforms, seeing them as disruptions to their influence. Yet Teresa's resolve was unbreakable. Each challenge became a crucible for her faith, refining her commitment to God's will. She endured slander, isolation, and even temporary exiles from her own foundations. Yet her letters and writings from this period reveal a soul undeterred, humble before God, but fierce in her mission. Her struggles were not just personal, they mirrored the broader tensions of a church wrestling with reform and renewal in the wake of the Protestant Reformation. Teresa's battles, fought with prayer as her sword and trust in divine providence as her shield, stand as a testament to the cost of true spiritual leadership in a world resistant to change. Collaboration with St. John of the Cross. In the sprawling tapestry of Catholic mysticism, few partnerships shine as brightly as the one between St. Teresa of Avila and St. John of the Cross. Their collaboration wasn't just a meeting of minds, it was a divine synergy, a melding of souls ignited by a shared passion for reforming the Carmelite Order and deepening the Church's understanding of prayer. Together, they forged a spiritual legacy that still echoes through the centuries, guiding the faithful into the heart of God's mystery. Teresa, already a force of reform by the 1560s, had founded her first Discalced Carmelite convent in Avila, stripping away worldly distractions to return to the order's primitive rule of poverty and prayer. But she knew her vision needed a counterpart, someone who could match her zeal and plumb the depths of contemplation with equal fervor. Enter John of the Cross, a young friar whose quiet intensity and poetic soul belied a fierce commitment to God. Their meeting in 1567, when Teresa was 52 and John just 25, was nothing short of providential. She saw in him a kindred spirit, a man who could help her extend her reforms to the male branch of the Carmelites. Their work together wasn't without struggle. The broader Carmelite order resisted their push for stricter discipline, and both faced opposition, even imprisonment. John famously endured brutal confinement by his own brothers in Toledo in 1577. Yet through these trials, their bond deepened. Teresa, with her practical wisdom and maternal warmth, guided John as he established the first Discalced Carmelite monastery for men in Duruelo in 1568. In return, John's profound writings, like The Dark Night of the Soul, complemented Teresa's own works, such as The Interior Castle. Their teachings intertwined, offering a roadmap for the soul's journey through purification to union with God. What's striking about their collaboration is how their differences fueled their mission. Teresa's vivid, accessible style, full of homely metaphors like comparing the soul to a castle, balanced John's dense lyrical explorations of spiritual desolation and divine love. Together, they painted a fuller picture of the mystical life, showing that prayer isn't just a practice, but a transformative encounter. Their shared commitment to reform birthed a renewed Carmelite spirit, one that prioritized inner silence over external pomp, and their influence rippled out, shaping Catholic spirituality for generations. Their story isn't just history, it's a living testament to how God pairs unlikely allies to do extraordinary things. Teresa and John remind us that true reform starts within, in the quiet of the heart, where the soul meets its creator. The interior castle, seven mansions of the soul. Let's step into the mystic heart of St. Teresa of Avila's most profound work, the interior castle. Picture this: a sprawling crystalline fortress within you, a labyrinth of spiritual depth where God Himself dwells at the center. Written in 1577 under divine inspiration, Teresa crafted this masterpiece as a roadmap for the soul's journey toward union with the divine. She describes the soul as a castle made of a single diamond with seven mansions or stages of spiritual growth. It's not just a book, it's a pilgrimage of the interior life, a quest to peel back the layers of self and sin to find the radiant presence of God waiting within. The first three mansions are about awakening. In the first, the soul is distracted by worldly attachments, barely aware of the castle's existence. It's like standing at the gate, hesitant, surrounded by venomous creatures, sins, and temptations that try to drag you back. By the second mansion, you're stepping inside, wrestling with those distractions, but starting to hear God's faint call through prayer and reflection. The third mansion marks a turning point. You've got discipline now, a life of piety, but Teresa warns against complacency. You might think you've arrived, but pride can still sneak in like a glitch in the system, derailing your progress. And then come the fourth through seventh mansions where things get otherworldly. The fourth is a transition, a shift from human effort to divine grace. God starts taking the wheel, drawing the soul into supernatural prayer. By the fifth mansion, you're in the realm of the prayer of union, where the soul is like a silkworm spinning a cocoon, dying to self to be reborn in Christ. The sixth mansion is intense, spiritual betrothal to God, marked by ecstatic visions and trials as the soul is purified through suffering. Finally, the seventh mansion is the ultimate endgame, spiritual marriage, a permanent union with God where the soul lives in unshakable peace, fully aligned with His will. Teresa's genius lies in her raw honesty. She doesn't sugarcoat the struggle. Those early mansions are a grind full of setbacks and self-doubt, but she also offers hope, insisting that this castle isn't just for mystics or monks. It's for every soul willing to seek God with sincerity. Her words cut through centuries, reminding us that prayer isn't a passive act, but a daring exploration of the depths within where the Creator waits to transform us. The Way of Perfection, Teresa's practical guide to prayer. In the midst of her tireless efforts to reform the Carmelite Order, St. Teresa of Avila carved out a spiritual masterpiece that still resonates with seekers of divine intimacy today, The Way of Perfection. Written in the 1560s at the request of her nuns, this isn't some lofty, inaccessible theological treatise. No, it's a raw, down-to-earth manual born from the grit of her own struggles and the chaos of founding monasteries under constant scrutiny. Teresa penned this work with ink still fresh from battles with church authorities and the exhaustion of travel, yet her voice remains clear, urgent, and deeply personal, like a friend leaning in to share hard-won wisdom over a flickering candle. What strikes you first about The Way of Perfection is its practicality. Teresa wasn't interested in abstract mysticism for its own sake. She wanted her sisters, and by extension, all of us, to do something with prayer, to make it a living, breathing part of daily life. She breaks it down with a no-nonsense approach, focusing on the Lord's Prayer as a framework for contemplation. Line by line, she unpacks the Our Father, not as a rote recitation, but as a doorway to profound connection with God. Thy will be done, she muses, isn't just a phrase, it's a surrender, a radical act of trust that demands everything. Her words cut through spiritual fluff, urging readers to confront their own distractions and lukewarmness with brutal honesty. But Teresa doesn't just lecture, she empathizes. She knew the human heart's tendency to wander, admitting her own mind often drifted during prayer like a restless child. Her solution? Start small. Focus on Christ's humanity, His suffering, His love, and let that anchor you. She teaches mental prayer as a conversation, not a performance, encouraging her nuns to speak to God as they would a beloved friend. This intimacy, she insists, is the heart of the spiritual life, far more vital than endless vocal prayers rattled off without thought. It's a radical idea for her time, when rigid formality often trumped personal encounter, and it's a reminder that still stings with relevance in our distracted modern age. Beyond technique, Teresa's guide is steeped in her Carmelite vision of detachment and humility. She warns against the traps of worldly attachments, not as some dour killjoy, but as someone who's seen how they choke the soul's freedom to love God fully. Her words carry the weight of experience. After all, this is a woman who faced illness, opposition, and doubt, yet found in prayer a fortress no external storm could breach. For Teresa, perfection isn't about flawless piety, it's about persistent, messy striving toward God, step by faltering step. Her book isn't a polished artifact, it's a battle worn map drawn by a saint who walked the path herself. A lasting legacy of prayer and reform with St. Teresa of Avila. As we reflect on the life of St. Teresa of Avila, we're struck by a woman who didn't just pray, she wrestled with the divine, forging a path of spiritual depth that still resonates through the centuries. Her reforms of the Carmelite order weren't mere bureaucratic reshuffles, they were a battle cry for authentic faith, a return to the raw, unfiltered pursuit of God. At Journeys of Faith, we see her as more than a historical figure. She's a living inspiration for every Catholic seeking a deeper connection with the divine. Through our pilgrimages, books, and media, we invite you to walk in Teresa's footsteps to explore the sacred sites where her prayers echoed and her reforms took root. Her teachings on prayer, her unyielding devotion, are not relics of the past, but tools for today's faithful. Whether you join us at Holy Family Mission for a retreat or dive into our resources on saints and miracles, let St. Teresa guide your journey. Her legacy, much like our mission at Journeys of Faith, is to ignite a fire of faith, one that transforms hearts and draws us ever closer to the Eucharist and the heart of God. Frequently asked questions about St. Teresa of Avila. Who was St. Teresa of Avila? Saint Teresa of Avila, born in 1515 in Avila, Spain, was a mystic, writer, and reformer of the Carmelite Order, known as Teresa de Cepeda y Ahumada. Before taking her religious vows, she entered the Carmelite convent at a young age and became a central figure in the Counter Reformation. Her life was marked by profound spiritual experiences, a deep commitment to prayer, and an unyielding drive to restore the Carmelite Order to its original austerity and contemplative focus. At Journeys of Faith, we honor her as a beacon of Catholic spirituality, guiding the faithful through her enduring legacy. What is St. Teresa of Avila known for? St. Teresa is renowned for her mystical experiences, her foundational role in reforming the Carmelite order, and her timeless spiritual writings. She is often called the Doctor of Prayer for her profound teachings on mental prayer and union with God. Her efforts to return the Carmelites to a life of poverty and contemplation led to the establishment of the Discalced Carmelites. Through her life and works, she remains a pillar of Catholic tradition, inspiring countless souls on their own journeys of faith. What is the significance of her title, Doctor of Prayer? The title Doctor of Prayer reflects St. Teresa's unparalleled contributions to the understanding of contemplative prayer within the Catholic Church. In 1970, she was declared a Doctor of the Church by Pope Paul the the 6th, one of the first women to receive this honor. Her teachings on prayer as a personal, intimate conversation with God, progressing through stages of spiritual growth, offer a roadmap for the faithful. At Journeys of Faith, we see her as a guide whose wisdom helps us deepen our relationship with the divine through prayerful reflection. What does it mean that she was a Carmelite reformer? As a Carmelite reformer, St. Teresa sought to address the laxity and worldliness that had crept into the Carmelite order during her time. She believed the order had strayed from its original mission of poverty, prayer, and solitude. With unwavering determination, she founded convents under a stricter rule, emphasizing a return to simplicity and contemplation. Her reforms weren't just bureaucratic, They were a heartfelt call to holiness, a mission that resonates with our work at Journeys of Faith to inspire authentic spiritual growth. What are the Discalced Carmelites? The Discalced Carmelites are a branch of the Carmelite Order founded by Saint Teresa of Avila and Saint John of the Cross. The term discalced means shoeless, symbolizing their commitment to poverty and simplicity by wearing sandals or going barefoot. This reform movement prioritized a return to the primitive rule of the Carmelites, focusing on contemplative prayer and asceticism. Their legacy continues to inspire, much like the pilgrimages and resources we offer at Journeys of Faith to help the faithful embrace a deeper spiritual life. How did St. Teresa reform the Carmelite Order? St. Teresa reformed the Carmelite Order by establishing new convents and monasteries that adhered to a stricter, more austere way of life, beginning with the founding of the convent of San Jose in Avila in 1562. She enforced rules of poverty, enclosure, and intense prayer. Despite opposition from within the order and the broader church, her persistence, often fueled by her mystical visions, led to the formal recognition of the Discalced Carmelites as a separate entity. Her story is one of courage and faith, a reminder of the transformative power of conviction that we celebrate at Journeys of Faith. What are the main writings of St. Teresa of Avila? St. Teresa's major works include The Life of Teresa of Jesus, her autobiography, The Way of Perfection, and The Interior Castle. These texts, written with striking clarity and humility, detail her spiritual journey, offer practical advice on prayer, and explore the soul's progression toward union with God. Her writings remain essential reading for anyone seeking to understand Catholic mysticism. At Journeys of Faith, we encourage exploring these works as part of a broader journey into the richness of our faith. What is the Interior Castle? The Interior Castle, one of St. Teresa's most famous works, is a spiritual treatise that describes the soul's journey to God as a progression through 7 mansions or stages of spiritual development. Written in 1577, it uses the metaphor of a castle to illustrate the deepening levels of prayer and intimacy with the divine, culminating in spiritual marriage. This profound text continues to guide the faithful, much like the resources and pilgrimages offered by Journeys of Faith aim to illuminate the path to holiness. What are her teachings on mental prayer? St. Teresa taught that mental prayer is a personal, silent conversation with God, a practice of turning inward to listen and commune with the divine. She emphasized that prayer is not just vocal recitation, but an act of love and friendship with God accessible to all. She outlined stages of prayer from vocal to contemplative, encouraging perseverance even amidst distractions or spiritual dryness. Her insights remain a cornerstone for Catholics seeking deeper connection, a mission we share at Journeys of Faith through our educational media and retreats. How were her mystical experiences significant? St. Teresa's mystical experiences, including visions, locutions, and the famous transverberation, a piercing of her heart by an angel, were pivotal in shaping her reforms and writings. These encounters with the divine validated her mission, giving her the spiritual authority and courage to challenge the status quo within the Carmelite Order. Her experiences also provided a first-hand testimony of God's active presence, inspiring generations of believers. At Journeys of Faith, we see her mysticism as a powerful witness to the miracles and graces that await those who seek God with an open heart. Be sure to click the link in the description for the full article.
It's your journey, but we won't make the trip alone, 'cause we know God will lead us home. It's our journey of faith. It's our journey of faith.